As some of you may know, this was supposed to go up much earlier, before the Fossilized Wonders video actually, but thanks to my backup hard drive getting corrupted for whatever reason while I did a fresh install of Windows, on a different drive mind you, I just lost the script file, which I pretty much had finished writing by then, among other things. So I had to rewrite the whole thing from scratch, while poking at the points I could still remember from the original. I have now taken the proper measures to prevent that from happening again, but it still does sting. Anyways, ReiReimu. We are talking about ReiReimu, the sequel to Little Reimu, also known as YouReimu, also previously known as Osana Reimu. That's a lot of name already. Actually, my original plan was to talk about both of them as parts of a whole, since it's supposed to be a duology, right? With the two works complementing each other to deliver something greater than the sum of its parts. I didn't always think of it that way though. When I decided to talk about YouReimu, it was, well, one, because I like it and it's a story that spoke to me personally once I was past the facade of sad Touhou fanwork, but also because that's the landmark title, right? That's the one people bring up in conversation. It had been a while since I watched both of them back to back, but even then, the one that really stuck with me was the first one. Except for like this one bit, which we'll definitely get to, ReiReimu was, for me, mostly there as the sequel that just kinda repeats the same emotional beats and, in a way, serves to relieve some of the heaviness from YouReimu, like trying to force a happy ending into a story that didn't really need it. All of that from the idea of the sequel that I held on to for a very long time. So now, as a more mature and mellowed-out individual, hopefully, maybe, can I go back to ReiReimu and be able to look at it with different eyes? Will I find something that I didn't realize was there the whole time? Was I wrong to dismiss it all these years? Yes. But also no. You know what, it's complicated, let's get into it. ReiReimu is the second of Joyful's works, beginning shortly after the end of their first series. The first episode was uploaded to Nico Nico on May of 2012, and it ran for a little over 2 years until August of 2014. Though it has one less numbered episode compared to YouReimu, most of them are divided in multiple parts this time around, making it overall a bigger project. Now you know how the first series goes, a tale taking place in a past, more hostile version of Gensokyo, about the yokai of darkness Lumia finally finding what she had been missing for as long as she existed. The one thing that truly sated her hunger, people she can cherish and that likewise cherish her. It's about family, love, caring for others, how finding the right people can turn your life around for the better, and how far are you willing to go to protect them. A tragedy that attempts to set up the current continuity, with Reimu eventually taking up the mantle of the Hakure Shrine Maiden, and Lumia becoming the goofball we all know and love. It's a pretty definitive way to close off what's supposed to be a prequel of sorts, complete with Yukari wiping Reimu's memories to save her the pain of being orphaned, and well, literally everyone else too. I guess in an attempt to explain why the previous Shrine Maiden, who I'll be referring to as Sendai from now on because it's easier, is never mentioned again. It's really the only thing about the whole thing that still bothers me to this day, and sadly it does carry over to the sequel. By the way, congrats to one previous Shrine Maiden for showing up in an official work finally. Definitely not what fans were conjuring up all these years though. So anyways, how does ReiReimu continue the story? Where do we even go now? Part of YouReimu's appeal is the prequel element after all, along with the elaborating on what in official works is an otherwise pretty bare-bones character. How do you continue without that? Well, you don't. Despite the titles for both series only mentioning this girl, this is all supposed to be about Rumi actually, right? Okay, it is very much about Reimu too, but Lumia is the beating heart that drives the narrative forward. Without her, well, there's no actual story to tell. So of course she's gonna be showing up again one way or another. And again, my first impression all those years back was that ReiReimu was just trying to repeat what the previous work did, trying to be another emotional Touhou fanwork. And there is some of that, for sure, and much in the same way as the previous work, it can come out a bit forced occasionally, like, oh damn, the bloom is on, quick, you gotta feel something. But the way it accomplishes it is by turning everything on its head. It's almost a perfect mirror image of YouReimu, and this is what I'm gonna spend the rest of the video talking about. So ReiReimu takes place in present-day Gensokyo. Gone are the days of the Shrine Maiden being on her own, both hated by yokai for disposing of their kin, and feared by humans for her merciless ways, though she can still throw a mean punch if the situation calls for it. What's kinda funny to me is that this is a pretty standard opening out of context. Reimu and Marisa sparring, yokai lounging at the shrine, a big hangout featuring a whole bunch of characters, Lumia Munchbot, and while it is a more familiar sight for anyone watching, it is also a stark contrast to what we were introduced before in the series, a world where humans and yokai coexist and can resolve their issues through different means, as instead of fighting to the death about it. And at the center of it all is Reimu, whose reluctance to keep doing things the same old way, and her wish for a more peaceful existence is what gave birth to this new world, urging Yukari to find a new method of handling things. Which does kind of imply that she could have done this from the very beginning, unless she was waiting for one Shrine Maiden to bring it up, but anyways. I genuinely love how Reimu is done here though. I think this series really gets to the core of her character, just like it previously did with her younger version. expression. She's definitely gifted in her abilities and holds the important position of the Kakure Shrine Maiden, but Reimu is still very much just a normal human girl with normal human struggles and emotions and reactions, who finds her job to be kind of a pain, yet still tries to realize the best outcome for everyone in the end, who despite the sometimes distant demeanor, still appreciates the company and how lively things can get. Kinda like wearing a mask, I wonder if there was something about that. And it's certainly not one-sided, as the yokai also enjoy having her around in their unique ways, and will lend their assistance in a critical situation. This is the world that Sendai and Rumia could only envision back then, one they could only experience just a sliver of in the brief moments they spent together, and it's now Reimu's everyday life. And of course, this was all made possible thanks to spell cards. That's another thing that I really like about the series. YouReimu aims to emphasize spell cards as a means of expression, and it pretty much ends up being how this story's message is communicated. We'll talk about what the hell that means a bit further down the line, but just keep that in mind for the time being. So what's the plot of YouReimu anyways? What's going on here? After being introduced to the new setting, we find out Rumia's seal is weakening, and soon she'll once again be released along with all the darkness that's been brewing inside of her. And this is the first thing that made me go huh, and wonder exactly at what point was the idea for ReiReimu conceived, because you'd think after all that shit Sendai put everyone through, this would have lasted a bit longer than until Reimu became a teenager, young adult. Like being generous, there's at most 15 years between YouReimu and ReiReimu. But anyways, Rumia breaks free of course, and the girlies goes of the incident, classic Touhou. We get treated to a nice sequence as they make their approach and everyone shows up to lend a hand, complete with that "you guys" from Marisa, before she yeets Reimu into the distance. It's a little corny, yeah, but we're well past that at this point I think. And while it's not quite the glow-up seen in later works, Joyful was definitely pushing themselves with these large-scale scenes, seen here and later in the clash between Reimu and Rumia. It still looks really nice after all these years despite the low-quality uploads. Then Reimu takes a train. Part 2 of episode 4 is one I continue to feel mixed about. On one hand, it finally gives Yukari some well-deserved release. To be honest, I was never really too on board with the way her character is portrayed in the series, you know, a little too forward with her emotions and vulnerable in a way that I personally don't think really fits her, too human to put it bluntly. But I also think this portrayal works for the kind of story that's being told here, and this moment is also in line with what I think is the overarching theme of both works. At the same time, it takes 14 minutes to do all this, and instead of focusing on the relevant bits, that is Yukari's feelings that she had to carry alone all this time, it ends up coming off as more like exposition, because she is essentially just recapping the important events from YouReimu and sort of explaining everything that happened. But if you watched that first, which you should have, and were paying attention, aside from a couple new details, this is all stuff you already know. Sure, Reimu doesn't know it, but she also didn't need to know it. She was already gonna solve things her way just because that's how Reimu is. She didn't really need any additional incentive to do so beyond protecting Kensokyo and helping the yokai she's known since her childhood. And actually, suddenly learning about all this gets no reaction out of her aside from patting Yukari on the back. There was potentially having a heart-to-heart between these two, definitely, but the way it's handled is just sloppy. Well, hold on, what's the reason Reimu doesn't know this already? Right, so again, YouReimu does kinda play itself as a prequel to the Windows Touhou canon, right? And while Yukari wiping everyone's memories is kind of a lame excuse to keep to that continuity, which mind you is already kind of a pointless goal in and of itself, since this is a fanwork and you understand that this is a fanwork and not canon, whatever. It's just a little detail at the end. And at least in the case of Reimu and understanding Yukari's relationship with her, it makes sense as to why she did it. But then in ReiReimu, it just serves to allow the characters to tell the viewer things they already know, or it just has to be worked around, like in the case of Yuka, who is revealed to have outright refused the procedure. And in any case, the new characters we see here were not even around back then, so they never knew about Sendai to begin with. It's just, why? There is some semblance of something being done with this though. Little bits here and there that implied that the memories were so strong and impactful that no matter what Yukari tried, they would still remain in some form. Kinda like an antithesis to what she says in the first work. Yes, happiness can be taken away in an instant, but memories can last a lifetime. You can't just take them away. But it's so subtle that I just feel like I'm coping and trying to find any hint of meaning to all this. Anyways, now that we're finally past that, I get to talk about the meat of the series and what in my opinion is not only a well-crafted sequence, but the culmination of this whole story spanning two works. The clash between Reimu and Rumia is probably the clearest parallel to be found. In YouReimu, Sendai, a shrine maiden at the top of her form with years of experience under her belt, goes against a weakened Rumia who's essentially fighting for her life. So this time we have Reimu, a shrine maiden still in training who probably hasn't done much of actual fighting unlike her ancestor, against a grief-stricken Rumia who's being gravely powered up through all the darkness she consumed. After going at it for a while, with both girls getting close to delivering a blow before backing down at the last moment, Reimu finally decides to fight using spell cards. This is a story about connections. This whole thing, YouReimu, ReiReimu, it's always been about connections one way or another. The joy to be found in sharing moments with others, in loving and caring for someone else, and being loved and cared for yourself. It's about seeking out company, but also welcoming it with open arms when it presents itself. It's the willingness to lend a helping hand to someone in need, but more importantly, to be willing to accept it when it's offered to you. We are here to help each other out in the end. Whatever it is you're going through, you don't have to walk that path alone. There is someone out there willing to walk by your side, to lend you a shoulder to rest on, if only you'd let them. All of that are the feelings Reimu is communicating to Dumia, not through words, but through her silly fireworks display, just like the ones they saw that evening at the shrine. And it is enough to break through that hardened armor she's wearing. It's now that Dumia decides to use a spell card of her own, to show Reimu how she really feels. Trapped, alone in a prison of her own making. That's how she manifested in the first place once her seal broke, with multiple arms to push away anyone who approaches, and now she's subjecting Reimu to those feelings in a last-ditch effort to stop her. Reimu in turn doubles down, uses her own fantasy nature, and for the first time finally gets to Dumia, and that's all that needed to happen. This embrace is all she needed this whole time. The reassurance that everything will be fine even if she still can't stop blaming herself for everything that happened. And with all the darkness consumed, Dumia finally fades away. Honestly, I wouldn't even mind if it just ended here on a similar note as the first series, if a bit lighter. It's a nice thematic conclusion to everything that was put forth throughout the duology. But there is a 6th episode acting as sort of an epilogue where Dumia is reunited with Sendai in a sort of limbo purgatory that Yukari had been maintaining all this time with the help of Yuyuko, which also serves to explain why she appeared exhausted earlier on. It doesn't bother me that much, but I'm not a big fan of the whole "this was always the plan" being used here. I think it just serves to kinda lessen other aspects of her character and growth. Like the idea she presented to Reimu earlier on was to erase Dumia completely, and that would have been in line with how she acted in YouReimu. You know, how she always approached Dumia with certain animosity and even considered killing her at the very end, but didn't because getting that revenge would just be stepping on Sendai's wishes. There's a lot of complex feelings clashing there, it adds a lot of nuance to her character that this moment just completely does away with. Listen, I just don't like how Yukari's done, she could have been so much better. But anyways, it is a touching moment of course, the chance for everyone to finally be honest with themselves, saying their proper goodbyes and finally moving on, including Sendai herself. Dumia of course gets to stay in Gensoku with Reimu, and even if I think the setup could have been better, that little shy hand wave Reimu gives her mom is just perfect. That's the best part of all this for me. But also we need to talk about parallel universes. So, this idea of multiple Gensokyo comes absolutely out of nowhere, means absolutely nothing for the narrative, but it is a nice message to the community that makes works like this possible. It's saying, yeah, your vision of Gensokyo is just as valid as any other, and how even fanworks can become their own thing, like this one. They didn't need to be here. No, but when you consider the context of like 2010s Nico Nico and fan culture, yeah, it makes total sense to me. I mean, even back with YouReimu, the credits for each episode were accompanied by fan art that other people made for the series, and that was even continued in ReiReimu too. Again, this idea of community and connections is something that's engraved into the very core of the series, and I think this is why. And if I can get personal for a bit, for me it's a reminder for why I do this. This moment is part of what radicalized my views on fanworks and the wider fandom at large. Yes, I will criticize things to hell and back, because 1, nothing is perfect, 2, I don't like everything ever, 3, this is my video and I make the rules. But really, this is what it's all about. It's good. So why are we here? What did we learn? Did we learn anything? You know, it is kind of a shame to me that these are only brought up as that fanwork that will make you cry. I mean, it does that, it's certainly an effective way to sell it, I mean that's why I watched it in the first place, but there's so much more to be found here. I think it can even be a bit of a disservice to reduce it to just that. ReiReimu is good. It complements and reinforces the themes of the original by presenting a story that contrasts with it. I'm sounding like a broken record by now, but that's the video's title. It really is a mirror of YouReimu. Like even the tagline is a reversal of the original one, that's the whole point. This does mean that at times it can feel like it's repeating itself in some areas, but I don't think it undermines the insight that this different point of view brings to the table. I don't have much to say about the music this time around, it's pretty much again just random arrangements of Touhou music. I think there was a little more effort to make them fit their respective characters, made easier by the fact that there's more of them. Of course, there is Arigato, the sort of tie-in song by Liz Triangle that plays during the climax of episode 5, and it is a beautiful ballad that combines both the themes of Reimu and Dumia, with the lyrics giving a pretty good summary of everything that happened. And it plays in full too, just letting that moment soak in, it's really good. And I didn't forget about the dub this time. No, actually I did. I'm writing this as I'm finishing recording the voiceover, but it's fine. I think it's a nice compliment that you can choose to have. I only watched a couple episodes of it. Personally, I'm used to not having voice acting, that's how I prefer to watch the series, but the dub is perfectly fine, and if you feel that it adds an extra layer to the experience, well, I would recommend it for sure. Overall, well, YouReimu is still a pretty complete story that delivers all it has to say in its runtime. It's still great on its own, and it could have very well stayed that way. If you decided to watch just that one, you'd come out of it pretty satisfied. It's not like it really left itself open for a continuation. YouReimu is just the cherry on top, here to give you a better look into what it all means and recontextualize certain things, and it does that very well. I think that's all I have for now. There is still one more work in Joyful's library, I'm aware. It is much shorter, I've only watched it once, but that was a while ago. I'm certainly not opposed to talking about it if that's something you guys would like to see, but I would have to rewatch it first to know if I have anything to say about it to begin with. In any case, I got other plans in the meantime, maybe bring back that little series talking about specific Touhou characters, if anything, so I can upload a little more frequently. For now, thank you so much for watching, consider subscribing if you want to see more videos. If you enjoyed this one, do leave a like, as well as anything you want to tell me in the comments below. It helps more than you think. Stop by my Twitch channel if you want to see me play video games. I announce whenever I stream here on YouTube and on all my socials, and you can also find all the VODs of my previous streams on my second channel. And once again, I will see you next stream.